206.
Mic check, mic check, mic check. Go.
Salutations.
1 1 2
Hello.
Hey, we got Cameron on here. This is Jason checking in from the Southwest, taking the opportunity to do my first hosting session with the 206. We want to send, as Big Tim would say, love, prayers to all y'all out there in the 206 during these particular times we're living in. We're still here in honoring the voice, honoring the story, speaking from the heart, speaking from emotion. And we got a special guest today. And as it is my first time hosting the 206, it's also this guest's first time being on a podcast. And this guest is someone special to me, dear to me. It's my sister's sister, a.k.a. my sister. And her name's Cameron. She's with us. She has written a book, shared with us some of her thoughts and feelings through the written language. And the book's called Raw Sugar. And it covers a lot about her experience in life at certain times, and in particular through certain experiences. And we're going to have a lot of questions for her about it. Before I get into that and start asking those questions, Cameron hails from the California area, Southern California area. She is an educator and a counselor in her own right. She got her master's degree in both education and counseling. And she's currently working for schools, in particular with the, how do you say it, Cameron? Umoja?
Yes. So I work for this program called Umoja Project Success. It's a retention program. So essentially, what we do is we provide services for our students so they can transfer out quicker. In the program, it's under this community called Umoja, which means unity in Swahili. And so we're pretty, anyone that's interested in joining can join. But I predominantly work with African American students, which is like super, super cool for me. I was a student in this program when I was going to the JC that I work at. And now I'm working for the program. So that's what I'm doing currently. And then I'm on my way to becoming a counselor, which, I'm hoping will happen very, very soon.
Hey.
Beautiful for that. And thank you for your service.
We share those
and
same hope.
Commitment to education, all that. It's beautiful. And with that being said, too, perhaps we want to speak on some of these things together, right? We're talking about education, counseling, and how do we share our words and our thoughts. So Cameron wrote a book called Raw Sugar. And I want to say, before we get into maybe the content of the book, on the cover, it says Ashley Anderson Stern. So writer's name. So Cameron, maybe you can kind of break down just a little bit about how you chose that name and why you chose a writer's name as opposed to putting your birth name on it.
Well, the reason why I had to go with a pseudonym is because since the content is so personal and it's, all of that happened, the publishing company that I went through was pretty much just like, either you have to come up with a pseudonym or you have to, get permission from these people that you're essentially mentioning in the book. You have to get, I think they asked me to get it notarized or something like that. Like I had to have them sign off, and I was like, I'm definitely not speaking to these people, so we're just gonna go with the pseudonym. I have no interest in reaching out to these, a couple of the people that I had mentioned in the book, specifically guys that I had previously dated. I'm like, I'm not about to reach out to them.
Are they in that boy bye category?
Yeah, pretty much, exactly. And so I was like, okay, I'll go with the pseudonym. And pretty much Ashley is my middle name, and Anderson is my father's mother's maiden name, and Stern is my mother's maiden name. So my grandma on both sides, it's their maiden names and I put them together so I could kind of connect like my family or like my parents in it. So that's how I came up with Ashley Anderson Stern.
It's deep.
Hey, and it is deep, and that's pretty good for a pseudonym because it's actually you are some of those people, energetically, biologically, they live in you. So if you, as far as pseudonyms are concerned, that's as close as you can get, I think, to the real thing.
Yeah, and
I didn't even think about like the legal side of it either. Like I didn't think about that. I figured,
yeah, I didn't know about that either until they basically told me because it's not like I actually like mentioned their names, but it's like you could if it was coming directly from me, like if I put my actual name and this person might have read it, they could probably put two and two together that I was talking about them. So to I guess protect their privacy and my own, even though I feel like at this point it's not super private, you know. But that's pretty much why. And I also want to mention in terms of Anderson, that's my dad's mom's maiden name. I actually have like a, what would you call it? I don't want to say ancestor, but like a family member down the
Royalty.
line was, I don't think she was an author, but she was like an important librarian like back in like the Harlem Renaissance era, and a book was actually written about her. So I thought it was also kind of cool for me to keep Anderson or like use Anderson because kind of pay homage to her. So that was another reason why I decided to go with that, and luckily everything flowed. I got kind of lucky on that end.
Yes, paying
layers,
homage to the
layers.
ancestors and our ones who paved the way for us, I think is beautiful and inspiring in its own right. And just briefly, where I currently live in the Southwest in Navajo land, which the Navajo people call themselves Dene, it's largely related, praying for our loved ones who are no longer with us. And, we might know them, they can be our ancestor in that way. But they're here for us, and it's beautiful. It's like a prayer in itself to honor some of those folks who walked in, especially through your craft and through your art. And with that being said, yeah, I wonder your inspiration for putting your your feelings, your soul on these pages. What was kind of some of the things that led you to feel like, oh, I got to put this down now. I'm gonna try to publish some of my feelings out here, my thoughts and my words.
Um, well, like I had kind of mentioned, I I mean, I just started writing. Like I was going through a hard time with myself mentally, and I didn't know what to do, and so I just started journaling, and I can't at this point. I honestly can't remember like how it all went down. I think I like I said, I started writing, and I think one day I had decided to like share some of what I had written with a friend, and my friend was like, "Girl, like you should publish this. Like I really think that you should publish this." And I'm like, "Really? Like for real?" And that's kind of what put the thought of it in my head, to be honest with you. I don't know if I had really considered it until she said it. So I'm not kind of, I'm grateful, for her for even putting the idea out there, because I don't know if I would have, maybe eventually I would have considered it. Um, but I think that was kind of how that happened. And I don't know. I think sometimes like, when it comes to like vulnerability, because that's what a lot of the content in the book is about. I think I was going through a period where I was just like, I don't like, this is kind of it. Like this is what I'm going through. Like this is what's happening. This is, and I'm putting it out there. And funny enough, like I mean, I don't know. I think I felt really brave at that point about doing that. And so that at the time I was like, I didn't have such an issue with like sharing myself with people. That kind of changed once the book got published, but I'll save that for
Let me,
maybe later
Word.
in the
you don't
conversation.
mind me
Yeah, I was gonna
jumping in
say,
here. I'll go ahead,
shout out
Jay.
to your friends real quick. I want to say shout out to your
Yeah.
friend for doing that, and anyone out there got support, and you got people around you who are doing things that could be shared with others. Feel free to do that encouragement vibe. And yeah, speaking of friends, here Armand, yeah, get into it, brother.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, shout out to that friend too. She's probably like, yeah, Cameron, girl, you need to write something. I'm gonna drop something real quick. You see, just sign here and here, and you'll see there. I'll get a little 50% royalty fee on every unit sold, but don't worry about that, baby girl. No, but yeah, no, shout out to that friend for real. But I just wanted to talk about vulnerability because I kind of see it on two different levels. First, reading through the book, how you were clearly vulnerable with yourself. And that was like, part one, like you allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough with yourself to process everything that you're going to and try to navigate your way through it until you came to a point of like growth and learning. So that was like the first stage of vulnerability. Then number two, the fact that you were vulnerable enough to share it, to kind of like expose your own vulnerability to the rest of the world. That's like another level of vulnerability that I think it takes. And I think it's fantastic because so many people struggle with that on both levels, being vulnerable with themselves and being vulnerable with others. So for me, the reason why I like the book is like, take the content out for a second. I mean, the content's great within itself too, but it's almost like I was walking down the street minding my own business and I see like a journal on the ground, like, oh, what's this? And I just pick it up. And it's like someone just accidentally dropped their journal on the street and I'm reading it now. Like that's the vibe that I got. And I really appreciated that because oftentimes I feel like when people are writing and they're aware that they're writing a book for an audience, and I went through this experience myself when I wrote my poetry book, it just changes the nature of the book itself. And not to say that it's impossible to be authentic, but again, no pun intended, but yours is clearly very raw. Again, I think Jason mentioned in the beginning of the episode that the book's called Raw Sugar, and it's clearly very raw. And I like the fact. So when I was reading it, it was really like a breeze of fresh air because a lot of my friends know this. I'm like a big loser. Oftentimes, whenever I had any friends, no matter what it was, if I had a friend and they had to write something, whether it was academic or it was something like, still academic, but it was something that was more personal, having to do with emotions, I was always like begging my friends to let me read it. Like, please, 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 please let me read it. It's because it's like I'm so interested and gravitate towards people's thoughts, like how they're conceived, how they're birthed, and how they process their own internal reality and then manifest that into life, whether it's in this case it's through the written word. So just want to shout out to you on that vulnerability perspective, and it was great. And that's the biggest thing that I got out of it, and why I know I enjoyed it is because I knew I was reading something that was authentic and real.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's funny because from the people in my life that have read that, that's like actually my aunt, she read it. My aunt and my dad. And my aunt, I remember she had called me because she was like, I have to talk to you about this. Like, this is amazing. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And she was like, it was like you, from what people have told me, and this is like something like I really, really do appreciate a lot. This particular feedback I've been getting is, people are like, it was almost as if me and you were having a conversation. Like me reading the book was like having a conversation with you, and you were like telling me about, you're just talking, and I just really think that's such a cool thing about, hearing people hearing their feedback about it. And I guess it kind of made me think about when you had said, it was almost like someone had dropped a journal on the floor and you were reading it, because my aunt, when we were having that conversation, she kind of said the same thing, or it was like along the same lines. And so like that, it just like means like so much to me. Getting that kind of feedback about it really does. And I do want to mention like something about the vulnerability thing too, because it's weird. I don't know, like within like the past like few months, I want to say, like I was so reluctant to share my book once everything was like finalized. Like I think the book got published actually like in October, and it took me until maybe like a month or so later for me to actually like share it with people. And I think even like I want to say I posted something like about it on Instagram in like November, and I was just like, you know what, fuck it. And when I had first written the book, like it wasn't really like that for me. Like I was willing to like let people read it and, you know, give me their feedback and like open up. And I kind of saw that as it was like I don't know, sometimes when I think about vulnerability, it's like if I can sit here and be vulnerable with myself and admit things to myself, then it automatically, if anyone else has any shit to say, it automatically takes it away because it's like I already know because I already had this conversation with myself. You don't got to
Exactly. Good point.
completely takes their power away. And like for me, to be honest with you, like that when I had started writing the book, that was kind of empowering for me, like realizing that. And then, you know, like I said, I was reluctant to put the book out there. And it's like I had lost some sense of that. Like it was like the noise of everyone else had kind of taken over. And I don't know whether it was because it was like it was start like you know it was starting to become real for me, like okay, like I'm really about to publish this book, like people are really about to like read what I wrote, and you know not all of it is like, you know, rainbows and butterflies. It's like some really deep shit here. And I think part of the fear was it's like not everyone can connect, first of all, kind of like what you said first, some people can't even connect with themselves on that level, let alone like, you know, hear that emotional part of myself. Because you know, for a long time, sorry if I'm like going on a rant, but
Keep
No,
going.
that's what the 206 is for,
cool,
homegirl. Please stay
cool.
up on that soapbox.
I think I had talked about this in the book. I should know that, but you know, anyways, I have definitely been called sensitive before, emotional, all of that. And so I think because of that, I was just like, oh man, like, are people gonna think I'm just like some sad girl that like cries in the corner about stuff? And like, I don't know, like I said, it was like the noise of what I thought other people might say about me, like had really gotten to me. And then I think the more when my aunt had reached out to me, when my dad had reached out to me and was like, this is powerful. It kind of sucked in a way that it took other people telling me that for me to like let go of it. But I like regardless, I'm glad that I did, because, you know, I'm hoping it kind of brings me back to like that sense of empowerment I had of like, look, I wrote a whole book about, you know, shit that was going on with me mentally. I'm like, what do you have to say to me at this point? That's gonna, you know, like it's like I've already admitted these things to myself. So that
Right.
was that's kind of what I had to say, at least about, you know, vulnerability and stuff. And I do think my dad, he always tells me like it's, what does he say exactly? I can't say it, I can't remember verbatim, but he basically tells me that it's definitely a sign of strength when you can, like, vulnerability is a sign of strength, because most people, they see that as weakness, but it's like the fact that I'm strong enough to like sit here and be vulnerable with you, it's like not everyone can do that, not everyone can handle it themselves internally to even
Yep.
be able to, let alone, you know, externally with other people. Like it's just, and so I definitely have to like remind myself of that sometimes. So
Real quick, shout out Aunt Regina and Tony, your pops, for giving love and showing support. And vulnerability, man. I'm thinking, Tim, man, we talk about vulnerability a lot. I'm curious if you had any thoughts about that and or first impressions of the book.
Of course. So I want to try not to be like a volcanic eruption and just erupt everything I
I
have
know
to
you've
say
been
about
licking your
this
lips
piece.
this whole time, Tim, in
Yo,
the background.
yo,
Rubbing your hands
my
together,
lips,
licking them lips.
hey, Hey, my lips are so moist. Please, I don't need no lip balm. So, first of all, good evening to all my co-host, my guest, and all of our listeners listening to this. Good evening to you. Thanks for coming by and listening in. Um, Let me begin by echoing the same sentiments as my co-host. Let me just thank everyone that you referenced in the book, outside the book, that helped you become the person that you are today, as well as provide us the beauty and the gem that is raw sugar. By all accounts, whatever assisted ideas and people into this book eventually being unleashed is a very good thing. Most people run away from what makes them feel embarrassed, ashamed, everything. So this book is more than just, an opportunity or something just to read. This book is so good. And I'll tell the audience, I read this book 4 times already. 4 times. This book is so good that it makes all of the other books, biographies, famous people who've come out with their books. I don't care how vulnerable they've gotten in their reads. Nothing beats this because you didn't have a council of professionals, coaching her and telling her what to write, what to this, what to this. No, no, no. This is her at her time of life through the various emotional states, raw. It's appropriately titled Raw. And it's literally pulling down the curtain to show us all what we really hide from. You're basically giving a voice to so much of what we go through in our life that we just keep in the dark away from most people. So this book is kind of like, for me, it's a sneak peek at the type of human socialization and interaction and livelihood we all should be living by. So this, and for me, reading that book, I could resonate because I've really been in a lot of those similar places that you've been in so many different ways. And for me, reading it, I really felt like I was hemmed into a corner, what I'm saying, and to a point where I needed an outlet. I needed to unleash. And this was the way to do it, to journal, to write. And I've done this, many times myself. And it wasn't until later, like for me in 2015, I wasn't for like 5 years ago until the lesson of vulnerability for me really started to hit hard. And I was forced into it through my disability. And it was only until afterwards that I realized the powerful effects, domino effects of what one single person being vulnerable can do to many others around them. And it is the direction we need to go. It is exactly the type of things we need to be teaching our children going into the future if we ever hope to see a jump into the quality of our lives. So this book right here is a big deal. And one of the questions you touched upon it when I was thinking about it, I'm like, and this is something I feel with all people I feel inspired by. It's like, I wonder how much, to what extent they understand of their contribution to society. I just wonder. And I always knew that if I was given the opportunity to talk to every single one of those people I was inspired by, I'd let them know straight. And I'd know I'd be the only one to lay it down for them in a way to get them to understand on a new level just how important of a step this is collectively. So major gratitude and thanks for your contribution through this book. It's a big deal. I'll be, sharing it around till I'm dead. And yeah, just thanks. I'll stop there because, again, I went hard in the paint and real deep into the ocean in your book. There are like a billion and one things to say, but gratitude. And I think later in life, you're probably going to have an even more richer understanding of how important your actions were in this case.
Yeah, echoing that too, Tim. Oh, I'm sorry, Cameron. If you were going to make a
Oh
comment.
no, I'm just, I'm taking it all in. It's like I look at my book sometimes and it's a lack of confidence if I'm being completely honest, since we're talking about being vulnerable and whatnot. And I'm like, it's like, first of all, I'm looking at it like I have grammar errors of the yin yang. I added that shit all by myself, which I somewhat regret at this point, but I was just like, I had, like I had mentioned before, I had started writing that book in 2017. So, and like so much had happened during the time of me writing it that, like I didn't address in the book, like certain things I didn't address in the book. Is that by the time I finished, I was like, you know what? There's so much stuff I could write about. I'm just going to stop here because I'm in a good place mentally. So I'm going to stop here. But editing it took me so long and I was so over it. And so like I'm like hearing you and I'm like, this is amazing. Like this is like, it's like surreal for me to hear this because I'm like, my book is like, for whatever reason, length of the book always kind of bothered me. I'm like, oh, my little 60-page book, but it's like hearing you say that, it's like, no, it's so much more than that. So it's just very surreal for me, and I do like really really appreciate it. So I'm just processing it and I'm taking it all in.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Please, continue to take it in. Please, Armand.
Yeah, I mean, it's potent, homegirl. You don't need to worry about the length or the grammar. We ain't tripping on none of that. It's like the essence is there. Like no one's gonna. No, I don't think anyone's doing that. But I think there's a comma belongs right here and over there. Like for those grammar police people, I mean, sure, there might be some people doing that, but I think most people are just going to be. A lot of people are going to relate to what you went through, even if they can't relate through the specifics. They're going to be able to feel again the rawness and the authenticity in your book and be able to relate to that. And that's what everyone's focusing on. No one's caring about punctuation here and there.
Yeah, let me echo. Yeah, no, go ahead, Armand. Go ahead. I was going to echo you. Let me echo it because you mentioned essence. Yeah. Let me tell you something. Vulnerability is not vulnerability unless it comes out raw. I hate it when I'm going on social media or I'm on dating apps and they're talking about one of the first things they say. Oh, if you're reading this and you don't know how to use there and there properly, I hate it when people pronounce this and that. Who are you? Please. Who are you? That's not vulnerable at all. Do most people, when they're taking a dump or they're smoking out on their porch, focus on their grammar as they're talking to themselves or talking to someone they care? No, that is not how it is behind closed doors. So even if you were talking all mumble jumble at the expense of the moment, that's raw, baby. That's what you call raw. So it came out exactly the way it needed to come out and really break down and destroy people's mental conformities when it comes to other people's experience. You have to hear it exactly as close as it can be to the nature of how the person went through the experience. That's what makes this book extra special, is because you don't have any so much regulation surrounding that. It's exactly the way it goes down. And like Armand said, potency, baby. That's the essence. Yeah. It's the essence of what, me and my co-hosts try to incorporate in a lot of our projects, including this podcast. So it's right on the dot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add.
Go ahead, Jay.
Go ahead. Oh, word, real quick. I want to add to that too. Yeah, we're actually. I mean, I want to say I'm genuinely inspired by this book and questioning how much more vulnerable am I willing to go. And as Tim mentioned on this pod and what we do here, and there's times I for sure hold back because of judgments I have about myself and judgments I have that who might hear it and what they might think. And it's really deep to see, when I'm reading this about you, Cameron, because, I've known Cameron since she was a small child, like we were talking earlier before we started the pod, like 7, 8, somewhere 9 years old. And now in your mid 20s. And to learn this, like really, I learned so much about you through your writing and what you've gone through. And I felt like instantly closer to you, like a deep connection that I feel we'll, as family, we'll continue to have, or we'll have the opportunity to have, because I had a chance to read really your feelings and your mind at the time. It was incredibly inspiring to me and so human. It made me recognize how much of my own process is really worth sharing, especially with people who, like we're sharing here in the 206, who are willing to listen. And I hope to continue to take, you as an example, a teacher for me, in vulnerability and willingness and courage. And even how you're talking now, and not like, man, like I put it out there and I had the courage to do it then. And now I'm feeling also kind of concerned about it. Like all that, like everything you're saying is exactly in line with this raw vulnerability, that my prayer is that as human beings we'll be able to have that more and listen to each other, hear each other's stories, and really recognize the unique and beautiful aspects of it, even in its darkest hours as well as in its joyful hours. And then also the kind of shared reality that we all have here within what you really expressed. And something that I think is kind of less relatable is this manicured notion of what it should look like. And it's kind of how I was trained, in all candor, growing up in this part of how I grew up. There was this aspect of, put on the front, piece it in your price, is how it was said. And all those things affected, my personal experience in regards expressing myself. So hearing it from you, a young person as a leader, it's really been something that has inspired me, and I just want to thank you for that. So I can pass it over to Armand as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for that, Jay. And I'm just going to go ahead and finish my line of thought previously and give one more general comments about the book itself before maybe we can go into some of the particulars, some of the content, because I know we all have specific questions relating to certain things that are written. But I was going to say, the words that we keep throwing around here, vulnerability, power, strength, etc. For me, a couple more come to mind. The first of which is intimacy. Because I think, to me, it's self-evident, it's axiomatic that the human spirit yearns for intimacy. It's like that's what makes us human, that desire to be intimate with one another, to love one another and to be loved. And to me, vulnerability is a prerequisite for intimacy. And so for me, the way I look at it is, if you're not vulnerable with yourself, you are literally precluding yourself from that makes you human. It's like you're literally preventing yourself from being the most innate aspect of yourself. And if you're navigating and walking around the world like that, like, to me, that has consequences, that has its implications. So to me, like, there is no intimacy, the thing that humans yearn for the most, naturally and consciously. There is no intimacy without vulnerability. So if you're not ready or willing to be vulnerable, I would advise that you really take some time to just think about it, because I know it's tough for a lot of people, and it's a scary endeavor, but I think you're potentially missing out on some of the greatest joys life has to bring. Because once you're intimate with yourself, that within itself is one of the greatest bounties you can have. And then you also allow yourself to be intimate with others, which is, again, right there along with being intimate with yourself, like the second greatest bounty you can have. So, so again, intimacy impossible without vulnerability. And then, I mean, one more thing, I was even going to look at it from like a I don't want to say a biological perspective. It's giving like evidences of how, like, we're mammals, and yeah, you see like lions, other mammals, they love skin to skin contact, right? It's like a physical way of being intimate. Even when a mother first gives birth to a child, they immediately give skin to skin contact with the mother and the father to establish that bond between the child and their parents, right? And it's like intimacy and vulnerability is that internal skin to skin contact that you can have with yourself and you can have with others. It's like, can you imagine going your entire life without hugging somebody? How that would feel? Can you imagine? Like, you know,
Mm.
without hugging your family, without hugging your significant other, without touching your family, touching your significant other, you would literally go insane probably, right? So likewise, if we're not having that internal intimacy, that internal skin to skin contact, with you will, or I'll say essence to essence contact, like what are we doing? This is what
Yeah.
our spirit is yearning for. So I'll say that. And then I guess I was going to transition into some specifics. I had this thought, and I haven't fully processed it, so I'm going to articulate it to the best of my abilities right now. And it's my own personal observation. Doesn't mean that it's the truth. But one thing I noticed, again, in your book, it was very clear, and just throughout my entire life, is that I noticed that women go through a lot of turbulence that I don't necessarily see guys go through. And my conclusion on that is that because women, in my opinion, are more emotionally mature than men, not that men don't have the capacity, but I think we've been conditioned to not pretty much interact with our emotions as much as women have been, or have been allowed to do. And then therefore we kind of go along emotionally stunted. But I think within that, interacting with your emotions and facing your emotions and processing your emotions inherently is going to be a turbulent process, because, you know, I think it's in a Drake song. He's like, I don't need no pretentious thing because this life ain't easy, or something. Like, life is hard, life is tough, you know. And if you're like processing and trying to navigate your way through your own emotions as you go through life, as you learn, as you grow, as you make mistakes, like that can be a very turbulent process. And so I see a lot of women battle with their like self-esteem, their identity, their consciousness, in a way that causes this turbulence that I don't necessarily see with guys. And it's like, to me, it's like guys, like, it's not that they don't have these feelings that women have, but they're not confronting it. They're just kind of like sweeping it under the rug, or just like keeping it moving. And it may come across as like more stable, or there's more stability, but I'm wondering if that's why there lacks that emotional understanding and that emotional growth, because, you know, a guy may seem more stable and not as air quotes emotional, but I'm wondering if they had gone through those peaks and valleys that comes with confronting yourself, being vulnerable, being intimate with yourself, if they too may have had some of those turbulent times in their life. So I don't know if that was a question or just a statement, but that was just a reflection I had as I was reading.
Dude, that's deep. Armand, let me piggy on that and offer a question specifically. That's fantastic, and have me thinking, which has me thinking about a certain chapter in the book, a certain excerpt, or how do you call it, Cameron? What do you call each section? Do you give it a title, like a chapter, or is it just, what do you?
I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, yeah, I would just, yeah, I guess it would be a chapter. I mean,
Yeah, let's roll with it. Let's roll with
yeah,
chapter.
we'll just go with chapter, yeah.
So let's roll with that for now. And I'm thinking about this chapter on forgiveness, because this really struck me in a big way, spoke to me personally, and it kind of speaks to what you're saying, Armand. The way I was understanding it was, like, I asked myself, am I processing my emotions? And there's definitely clear evidence at times I'm not processing what I'm going through. So this chapter on forgiveness, I had a few thoughts on it. I'm wondering if I'll just pass it over to you, Cameron, if you just want to share with me or share with us just kind of like your overall reflections on this chapter on forgiveness.
That was like, I think, yeah, that was like a really big chapter. That might be like one of my favorite things, because it was very like freeing for me. Um, man, I I keep on referencing my dad, because me and him, I mean, like that was like a really big part of what I talked about in that chapter, was my relationship with my dad, and things weren't always good um with him, and it took me to being an adult to kind of understand some of his own turbulences, but I just remember calling him one day about something that was happening with me, like something that was going on. And that's when, you know, I needed to figure out this whole forgiveness thing, because I think I mentioned it in the book, how it can be seen as, for some people, it's a sign of weakness. And that's kind of when he broke it down to me. And it's like, the minute you like forgive someone, you're kind of like taking your power back. And that was something like I really appreciated. And, at the time, I think, like I said, in the book, that there were people in my life that I think I had forgiven, but I don't think I did. I think I was still kind of holding on to certain things, and kind of still letting them have that sort of power or control over me. And so I just, like, I had to sit down with myself and write about it. And um it was just like a really big thing for me. It's not an easy task, so I'm not going to sit here and act like it is, but like I will really never forget that day that I had talked about. I remember like distinctly like sitting on my front lawn and thinking about, like, man, I'm so angry with him. Like, I think I was like a freshman in college at the time. It was like my first week of school, like first week of college, and I'm like sitting here having these like existential thoughts.
Hey,
But I
Cameron, you
was just
mind?
so angry, and I was tired of it. It's so tiring being like that angry. Like I think I mentioned in that chapter how I would have like dreams of yelling at
Mm-hmm.
my dad, like, because I was so mad at him. And like it was just like I was tired of even that, because it was like I would wake up and I could feel my face. It was like moist from me like yelling and crying in my dream. And it was like, even if I decide to forgive you, like, the hurt is still going to be there. It's not like it just goes away or something. But it was just like, I got to do this for myself, because it's not mentally productive for me at all. Like, me being mad at you is not beneficial to my health, to my mental, like, physical health, mental health, emotional. It's not beneficial at all to any of that. And like I don't want to sit here and and be like I said, it's not an easy task at all. But it was just like, for me in that moment, I distinctly remember making a decision of, okay, Cam, we got to figure this out, because the more I like hang on to this, the worse things are going to get in my future life, and I really don't want that to be the case. Like, I need to like figure this out now, and you know work on letting it go. Otherwise, it's like I'm going to keep on having these dreams, and it adds stress. It just like does so many things that just aren't, it just wasn't beneficial to me. And that's why, in the book, I'm like, I didn't do it for the sake of my relationship with my father. I did it for, for my own sake, for me. Otherwise it was just gonna it
Tear
was just
you apart.
make my whole, just all of it. It was just gonna make things worse for myself. So that was kind of what my decision was about that.
Quick question, because I have an idea here that I think might be powerful for the audience, because Jason, Tim, and myself have all had the pleasure and the bounty of reading your words. But I'm thinking these things like 2 pages long. I can read that chapter for forgiveness for the audience right now if you guys are down. I think it's a good idea.
Sure.
Down for that, Tim and Jay?
Tim?
Oh, show Dizzle.
All right,
Please.
Here we go. All right. Forgiveness. I just felt so angry. So angry. It wasn't him. I felt more hurt by him than anything else. Played even. The anger, though. The anger I had was fueled by an issue much bigger. I started praying more, meditating more. Hell, I even fasted for 24 hours to receive some sort of spiritual guidance. And surprisingly enough, it worked. When I was about 15, my family had this huge blowout argument. It was a long time coming, honestly. The volcanic-like tension that for so long encompassed my home life had finally erupted, and it was bad. Prior to this argument, the relationship between my dad and I wasn't great, and the argument made it worse. I remember after everything had been said and done, I told my father that I needed space from him. I just didn't want to talk to him for a while, and I didn't. Not really, anyways. I would see him every once in a while, but barely. And whenever he called, I usually let the call go to voicemail. I was exhausted. Fast forward to my freshman year of college. It was the first week, actually. I can remember this day so vividly. It was a hot day that day. The type of day that when the breeze is warm and the sun starts to set, but it feels like the type of day when the breeze is warm and the sun starts to set, but it feels like a warm hug. I was sitting on my front lawn, really just thinking, when, out of nowhere, but clearly out of somewhere, I had a revelation. Before I had my revelation, I used to have angry dreams. About my dad. Dreams where, in them, I'd be yelling at him at the top of my lungs, as loud as I could manage. I was so angry. It was the kind of anger that automatically triggers tears because you're so upset. This anger would seep through my unconscious mind and right into my conscious reality because I'd wake up with my face moist and wet where my eyes were. It had to stop. That warm summer day, I realized the anger had to end. It had to. Yes, of course, it was hurting my dad because I wasn't speaking to him, but more importantly, it was hurting me. It was encompassing my whole spirit at very dangerous levels. It had hit me right there in that moment. If I wanted the anger to stop, I had to forgive my dad, and that's exactly what I planned to do. I forgave my dad, not for our relationship's sake, but for my own entirely. Fast forward again to when I was feeling angry a few months ago. I'm trying to figure out what had been fueling it. I remembered that day. What I came to realize was that my anger came from a place that forgiveness had not yet been welcomed. It became clear to me that I was angry with all the guys that I had felt hit. It became clear to me that I was angry with all the guys that had felt did me wrong in the past. I was over most of them, but I don't think I ever took the time or gave myself the space to actually forgive them. So when one hurt me after the other, it fueled the anger more and more. And so again, the Ferris wheel rhetoric of self-doubt continued to spin around and around in my mind. Why am I being treated this way? What am I doing to be treated this way? Why am I not enough? What did I do wrong? It kept spinning until I realized I had to let go of these individuals, but I hadn't forgiven them. The anger raging inside me, I believe, had merely camouflaged itself as a lack of forgiveness. Ironically enough, I ended up calling my dad one morning to hear his opinion on forgiveness. This is what he told me. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful and bravest things a person can do. It means relinquishing the power and control you've given to whoever has hurt you, reclaiming it, and giving it back to yourself. By forgiving someone, you're saying, you no longer have control over my happiness or how I continue to live my life. You see, I learned from my dad's own personal demons the importance of forgiveness. There were people in his life that hurt him and angered him very deeply. And up until he forgave them, he forgave them, these negative emotions bled out into different parts of his life, such as his familiar life, and ultimately made a huge freaking mess. Forgive the people that hurt you, that angered you, no matter how long it takes. It's not easy, but it's so important. Don't let anyone have that kind of control over the way you live out your life. There are people that choose to live the remainder of their lives in a bed of fear, hurt, and anger someone else made for them. F that. Take it back. Reclaim your power.
Hear, hear.
Powerful chapter.
Yeah, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you hear that? I hear it. You're already one of the best teachers that have lived. And you just started, mama. You just started. Tip of the iceberg, girl. Tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
This,
so I know I kind of. Go ahead, Jay.
I just want to say, yeah, this chapter, Cameron, it inspired me, man. Huge. This the whole thing about forgiving parents too, that's deep. It takes a lot and we need more examples of it, people talking like that, because I know so many of us are wounded by our parents, and like you shared about your dad, it's someone hurt him and angered him, and so that keeps getting passed on unless we do something about it, unless we really, like you're saying, decide for ourselves, like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to choose a different way. And I just want to say, thank you and for speaking about it, and for your dad too, for honoring you that way too, and sharing his thoughts, and also for sharing his support of you expressing yourself here in this way. So my sense is, without taking such a risk, man, who knows what the healing process looks like for us, and who knows what kind of healing we could offer to loved ones, and what kind of opportunities of intimacy, like we shared earlier, and vulnerability we can create when we actually get the time, or when we take the effort and courage to speak from our heart and let it out. So just want to say thank you for that.
The good thing about forgiveness too, I feel like most people don't know, is that it's self-liberating, emancipation, self-emancipation, but it also fundamentally gives the individual the opportunity to see things for what they really are. Emotions is a human tool that's extremely old. Now that we're in modernity, there's new ways, okay, that we should be self-examining our lives, our outcomes, our decisions, thoughts, everything. It really gives an individual the opportunity to see the many factors that took place and that have a huge hand into the development of a situation. So reading that chapter for me was very riveting. It was very tantalizing. My lips were licking my lips. I'm like, oh, she's getting there. She's getting to the chorus. She goes, Nirvana, she's there. And it's awesome because you've reached a realization, and yet there is many, many, many things that are currently orbiting you in that instance that's potentially out for you to grab, and others. That's what makes forgiveness exceptionally powerful, is that wave of opportunity. So yeah, mama. Exceptional chapter among many. It's great.
Oh, go ahead, Jay. I was gonna say, I don't know who's basically, I was gonna say if Tim or you or Jason had a specific oh, there we go. Jason, you brought up the forgiveness. There we go. Jason, you brought up the forgiveness. So I was gonna see if Tim had a specific chapter or a passage from the book that he wanted to ask Cameron about.
Yo, don't do it. Don't do it, son. Please don't do this. I don't know the pick, dog. I'm a kid at a candy store. I don't know which one.
As long as you don't pick mine, I'm good. If you don't pick, I'll shut you up if you pick mine, because I have to ask mine, one of my favorite ones. So as long as you don't pick mine, you Gucci.
Man, I don't even know, man. So I'll start off at the beginning of your book. You do mention, it was so greatly stated, and so many lines, so many good lines, mentioning that you didn't know exactly all the reasons why you were starting to write this book. You don't know in what way it would help others, and you got to this point where, and it reminded me of myself, where I'm talking to myself, and I still do this to this very day, that line where it's like, I know I can't be the only one to feel this way. I just can't. I know this can't be true. And for me, I imagine if I was you, that would have been enough for me to continue forward, just like it is enough for me to continue forward with the things I'm doing in my life. I just can't be alone. And when I read that, I remember thinking, I was like, yes, girl, you are not alone. Your intuition is telling you right. Yes. So, after that, I knew it was going to be a uphill, downhill, whatever you want to call it. Quite the voyage, quite the journey. Man, from, oh my gosh, from your pregnancy to your very low points, depression, self-harm, to your friend, who was who smoked weed, who you helped her out and she helped you out. And some of the words you shared with her in that chapter were extremely great. Your preacher, the preacher that was given that great analogy about the sequoia tree to your family, and how you talked about how lonely you felt, when your family left during those instances in which it would be a full house and they brought that energy. I know what that's like too. Being black, being not black enough, being accused of not being black enough, and being harassed, ridiculed, and bullied. I know about that. That took place with me in middle school as well. Only to know that, with other people, you also get negative stigmas and generalizations from many different other cultures. The stories you read, it just goes on and on and on. And the great part about the guys, the men in your life, at such an early age, and at the end, it's like you're consciously aware of, your journey continuing, don't know exactly where you're going, what you've been through, and it's kind of like to be continued. We'll see what happens if life goes on. So literally after the fourth time I read the book, I'm like, yeah, this girl, this girl needs to hear from us. I'm wondering how much feedback you get to this very day. Some of my questions range from, what all does she remember of those times? What all would she experience just by rereading the book? How often does she hear from anyone else who's come across her book? How does she generally feel about her book being out there now? Regrets, discoveries. Often the best things in life we learned is only through retrospect, is only through when we look back. And you mentioned in the beginning episode that you're with programs, what I'm saying, and that you hope to get into counseling. One of my questions is, I wonder how involved this masterpiece is going to be within her work. I wonder if her thoughts are going to go back to this as she's, trying to assist society, through her career. So many questions abound, so many questions within each chapter I have. It's amazing. It's great. I really can't say I have a favorite chapter. There's something in each one that I can resonate with, that is very deep, and many things that I can garner from each one. And it's the heart of it, the soul of it is really that raw sugar. It's that authenticity. There is no hobbling, there is no too much sugar coating, there is nothing. Honestly, it's the best thing anyone could ever do is go the direction that you have. Adults and adolescents alike, everyone needs to be doing it. But yes, Mama, I'll stop there for now. I'm probably going to have to put your life jacket on and come at you on a group phone conversation later. Go ahead, Armand, take over.
So Jason asked a direct question. I'm about to ask a direct question. I guess we all just listen to Tim talk about all his questions without asking a question. So, but
Yeah, see you later.
Exactly. Yeah. So here's my question. And it stems from, I don't know if it's my favorite chapter of the book. I mean, it's all great. They all are my favorite, because they all have their own unique aspects to them that I resonate with. But the thing I really, really like about this chapter is because you exercise something that I think is very critical to the growth and maturation of young kids as they're starting to maturate and develop intellectually and emotionally. And you did this, I call it a thought exercise, a flexing of your imagination that I think is very important, because like we hear certain things like, uh, hypothetical situations, your imaginations, thought exercises. And I think people undervalue the importance of these things, particularly when it comes to our social and emotional development. And I'm talking about one of the final chapters when you said part 3, I held myself. And you talked about what it took in order for you to begin to forgive yourself is when you started to see yourself as a different person. You weren't seeing yourself as Cameron anymore, because you talked about how it was so easy for you to be selflessly and unconditionally forgiving and loving and empathetic and compassionate towards other people, but you found it very difficult to do it for yourself. And that's not something that I think is unique. A lot of people speak about that, and they find it difficult as well. And you said the only way you were able to overcome that is when you started to see yourself as a different person. Like you quite literally and figuratively had an out of body experience and started to view yourself literally as someone else in order for you to be able to forgive yourself, because you knew you were great at forgiving others. So you had to see yourself as an other before you started to let your true self be forgiven. And I think it's just interesting, that thought experiment within itself, because ultimately when you think about everything that you're talking about in your book, so much of this is like a mental and intellectual process, when really it's about navigating certain thoughts. And we have certain like habits of behavior and thought that are unhealthy. You spoke a lot about that rhetoric Ferris wheel over and over. And it's like the only way we can get ourselves out of these things is to have like different thoughts. And sometimes all it really takes is just like the consciousness surrounding that, like I can change my internal framework. I can have different thoughts to combat these negative ones, or I can imagine something or imagine things looking differently. And all of a sudden you figure out a way to like, oh, well, I kind of suck at forgiving myself, but if I just don't think of it as myself, I can forgive myself. Then boom, you know? And what is that? That was just a thought experiment. That was just you using your imagination. Likewise, again, going back to these kids, you know, growing up, especially in today's age, where I feel like it's a lot harder to be a kid than it was even when I was young, is that, you know, kids to kind of learn, like, you know, not on, I think it's like, you know, your kids think like, oh yeah, my thoughts, you know, you know, my thoughts, my emotions, they affect me, you know, and I have to like experience these negative thoughts and these negative feelings. And it's like they're aware of that, but how aware are they that you also have control over your internal framework? You have control over your thoughts and your emotions. Like, yes, you can feel and experience them, but you're also their master. And it's like the moment you have that level of consciousness, I think you can start to do like the mental judo necessary in order to be content with something, or to properly experience something and go through hurt and go through pain, but allow yourself to do it in a way that's safe, that allows you that growth. And so like I really enjoyed that part, because that's what I think is something that everyone, you know, can learn and grow from and do, because I don't think a lot of people are just used to like kind of like diving internally, being super introspective, and like learning the kind of superpowers that we have at our disposal. And it's that our mind, it's that very thing that we feel entrapped or maybe betrayed by, is the same thing that's going to liberate us. So that's why I really enjoyed that part.
You know, I'm glad that you brought that specific chapter up, because that was like such a personal turning point for me. That was like, you know, like so many women go through that. Like they go through, and maybe not on such like not the same level maybe as I went through. Who knows? Like I don't want to speak on like anyone's experience. But like, you know, like that was sorry. Getting pregnant and choosing that particular route, like I talked about in the book, like it was like there's, I don't see this going any other way. Like I just didn't. That was so completely unexpected. And it was like it's not like I wasn't taking the proper precautions. It just, that's what happened. And like what helped me in that moment of me, you know, like you said, you called it an out of body experience, was literally that whole experience. Because I don't know if like you guys are aware of this or not, but the majority of the time, if a woman chooses to have an abortion, she is, depending, I guess, on where she goes, she's usually put under. So in that particular situation, it was just a bad situation all the way around. Like I was not trying to have my mom know, my family know. I get paid once a month, so I didn't, especially at that particular time, I did not have the funds to really like deal with that. I didn't, I'm connected, you know, my mom and I, we have Kaiser, and I was like, oh my god, like I don't want her to like figure this out if she gets a bill. Like I was freaking the hell out. And so I went to this clinic that my cousin told me about, and they did not put you under. They didn't put you under for that. So I was awake, fully aware of what was going on the entire time. And like I think I talk about it in this chapter. It's one of those, it was, I think it was that one, or it might have been another one, but I'm pretty sure it was this one. The one that you know, that you just mentioned, where like I'm sitting on the table And it was just like, I just kept saying, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry that because it had, like, I don't think I went into like depth or in depth about the week leading up to that particular day, but it was so stressful. Like, the person I was dealing with was not, it was just, it wasn't a good situation. Like, we did not know each other very well. And I don't think he was handling it very well. And so, like, by the time that day had even come, like, I was so worried about, the financial part of it, where it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, who was going to take me, if, like, all of that. I hadn't even stopped to process what the fuck was about to happen and what I was about to go through. And so, like, that's also another reason why in that particular moment when, everything was said and done, like, I just kept saying, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry that you are going through this, and you're dealing with this. Like, this is happening to you. Like, there was nothing, I don't know. Like, it was just like, there was nothing else I could say at the time, but I'm just like, I'm so, so sorry that you are feeling this down and this hurt and this, like, and, like, on top of it, I'm talk about when I've had these conversations with people about that particular, about having an abortion and everything, like, it wasn't, I've pretty much gotten over, like, the fact that I did that. That was the decision that I made, because I think in the long run it was just the best decision for me at the time. And, like, I can accept that, and that's fine with me, because that's not how I wanted things. If I was going to have a child, like, that is not how I wanted it to go down at all whatsoever. Like I said, I barely knew this person. And so, like, when I talk about it, that's not the part that kind of gets to me a little bit. It's, for me, it was like it was physically traumatizing because of the fact that I was awake when it was happening, which is another reason why I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, that was when I had that out of body experience. Like, I would literally imagine myself as a completely, like I said in the book, as a completely separate person. Because if it was a separate, if it wasn't me, and if it was a friend of mine, that's exactly how I would have approached the situation after the fact. If a friend had gone through a situation like that, I would have sat down with them. I probably would have given them a hug. I would have put my arm around them. I would have comforted them in that particular way, because that's my natural instinct. When someone is, like, hurting, no matter who it is, my natural instinct is to, like hold them. Like, and that's why I guess I called that chapter I Held Myself, because it was like, that's what I would do that's what I do in general when I have a friend who is going through something. I would want to hold them. Like, even if you're, like, crying on me, like, I'm holding you, like, I've got you. Even if I may not always have the right words, I may not know, like, always know what to say, but, like, it's kind of like what you had brought up earlier. It's like skin to skin contact. For me, you're not always going to know what the right thing to say to me, but holding me, like, just that, like, physical comfort of you holding me, that can get me through some fucking hard times. And so that particular moment was a hard time for me personally. And that's why in my head I'm like telling myself I'm so sorry, and I'm imagining myself as someone completely different, and I'm just like, I'm holding you, because that's what I would do if it was anyone else. I would be holding them. I would be trying to comfort them in that kind of way. So that was just, like, a really big lesson for me in terms of, like, self-compassion. Like, that was, like, a really, really, really important lesson that I learned. And I think it might be like the next chapter or the chapter before. I think I said it's the lesson I was surprised at. Like, it was like self-compassion. I was, like, learning that. I learned that through, like, that particular situation. So it
Yeah,
was,
that's what I felt throughout most of your account, especially around that instance was how lonely you were in so many different aspects of your life in that time frame. And that's what I felt. And a lot of the moments you had was extreme loneliness. And I understood from my point of view, the unique nature of your consciousness. A lot of times, all it takes is for us to be able to perceive things very acutely to experience a loneliness that nobody else can experience. And as I read it, I understood that in these developments of your circumstances, she would experience exceptional loneliness because your consciousness, your emotional intelligence is so acute. And once I got to that chapter, I was like, oh man, can't even imagine. I see it as a survival mechanism. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, in my interpretation, you didn't have masses of people surrounding you, people you cared about and people you cared about at every corner and every nook that you were going through. You were essentially by yourself. So that's how I saw that part. I wasn't surprised at all at some of the intellectual, emotional, and mental spaces you've reached throughout that journey. It's either that or it will tear you apart. So, it's raw power to me from a human being to see you reach these points and exercise these type of mental and spiritual developments. It's amazing. It's great.
In adding and asking a question here, Cameron, thank you for sharing and speaking on your experience and with the abortion and specifically and sharing that and saying you're sorry to the little one, right? That is your baby, that because of circumstances and how it was where you were at the time, this was a difficult choice you had to make. And you spoke on it today with courage. So thank you for that. And I think it's a common story for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't talk about it. And just to be vulnerable here with you and to really show my appreciation. I have been through a similar experience from the male side of that, where a partner of mine was pregnant and we couldn't come to an understanding, to say the least. And that story deserves its own time, and I'd be happy to share that too, both on the 206 and with you specifically. And I won't get into it right now because I don't want to kind of take this time for that. But I wanted to honor that and say thank you for speaking on it and the pain one experiences when you think about a child you might have, and then you don't, and it's really intense. So you felt alone, and I understand. I also felt alone. I didn't tell anyone that for a long time. In fact, this might be the first time I've ever told anyone about it. Definitely in public like this, put it out there for whoever's willing to listen. It took me a long time before I was able to tell like my folks. And we had a ceremony. I'm not playing. I prepared my parents for about a year. Like, I got to say something just because I was so afraid of what I might receive from them, like a judgment. Thankfully, I didn't. So I want to ask you, that was my blessing. My parents listened to me, and they felt my pain. They cried with me when I told them that story. And here you are. You wrote it. You shared it with us. You mentioned that you wanted to hold your mom's hand, how that would have been comforting. And now your family knows about it, and people know about it. I'm curious, with that knowledge now, not in the same way, but not about this particular part in your journey, but in general, do you feel like writing and giving yourself to whoever's willing to listen and read? Do you feel like it's expanding community? Do you feel like it's assisting you in certain aspects of loneliness? And maybe if something difficult were to come up again, do you feel like you could trust people with it? Maybe as a consultative part, like, hey, let me run this by you this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm experiencing. Are you feeling your community is growing? Your connections with your family have been growing?
I think like in terms of like with my dad, I think after the book, I feel like me and him are able to have like a lot more honest conversations because it's like I literally like put that out there. I talked about my relationship with my dad and with him in particular, and then like my parents. And so I think for him, he kind of appreciated the honesty. So like that's like kind of one example, I guess I would say, that happened. And like I don't know who else in my family has, besides like my dad. I know my dad has, obviously I mentioned it just now. My dad has read it, my aunt has read it, you have read it. So in that sense it's expanding, it's doing that. I don't know who else in my family has technically read it, to be honest with you.
Word.
But I know a lot of what I wrote in general, I know it's going to be useful, especially like in the work that I want to do. This is actually like a thought that had come up for me earlier. Because I think that, we were talking about vulnerability. It's kind of going back to that conversation. That's how I connect with my students a lot of the time. Like I keep it real with them, probably a little bit too real because it's, I still have to be professional, but I think that's why they like fuck with me the way that they do, because I'm like, look, we're not that far apart in age for one thing. At least when I first started working there was, um, we're all like, maybe some of us are like 1-2 years apart. At this point, there's like some distance now, but like when I first started working there, it would be like me being like fresh out of college and them being juniors. It's like we're so close in age that it's everything that you're going through, it's still fresh on my mind. So, I think the fact that like I don't it kind of it's the stuff that I talk about in the book, some of the stuff that I've talked about in the book, I have shared, with students. And like I said, like on a professional note, that may not be the best idea, but I know that it definitely has helped me connect to students. And there's been a couple of students that have been, because I have been vulnerable with them, or I have told them certain things about myself, some of the things that I talk about in the book, they have opened up to me about personal things that I don't know if they would have shared otherwise. Like maybe at some
Exactly.
point with another person, but I don't even think that conversation would have came up unless, I'm like, look, like I went through this and that, and they're like, okay, like I think the vibe that they get is like, okay, like she's been through this, or she's not going to judge me because she's been through this.
Exactly.
We have a similar, it's something we have a common thing going on
Shared
here. So
experience.
like they can, they can open up to me about things, and I think that's why, like I said, I think that's why they fuck with me so much, and that's like a whole other thing I could get into. But I don't think it's always like, um, I think a lot of the time that kind of vulnerability can be kind of looked down upon, but I think it's like really, really important, like to connect, like
Exactly.
in terms of connection in general. And then like for what I want to do, like working with young students and stuff like that, I do think like, I don't know, it's definitely helped me connect to students, I want to say, for sure. Like me being like that, and just like kind of keeping it real with them, cuz it's like a comfortability thing. It's like I'm comfortable sharing these things with you, and like I said, it's like I know you're not going to judge me and blah 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 blah. Um but it's also, it can be tricky. It can be a little bit tricky but I do think that it kind of I think it helps the relationship a little bit. So I want to say, like, even though there was a couple of students I remember when I was like writing this, I was, we would be talking in the room or whatever, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of writing this book. And they'd be like, oh, for real, like that's cool, like da da da, I want to read it. And I'm like, all right, like I'm not finished, but here it is. And they'd be like, man, this is so good, like da 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 da. And I want to say, like, and if I hope I'm answering the question, but uh, I want to say that kind of definitely being like that, like it helped connect me to people for sure, and the community I work with.
I hear that, and I appreciate that. Like Tim was affirming, as you mentioned, that experience what it will provide in relationship to a lot of people that you're meeting and have yet to meet, probably, and like it's kind of a beautiful reminder about the human condition. We're all here having very similar experiences, but we're really afraid to speak on it, or some of us anyway. So to have that courage to speak on it, you're really opening a door, an invitation for a lot of people. A lot of people like myself, man. I'm telling you, before this moment, I wouldn't have mentioned what I mentioned, and now I'm inspired to share that because I started to feel like, yeah, Cameron here helping out the folks who are trying to get educated and do well by their life and do things that are meaningful. And it might be something holding them back like that, but if they can relate to their counselor, someone who's with them, someone who's in a position that, hey, you can get through it and you can grow. Now you really, maybe that's the specific key for certain people. And I was just thinking about, man, I never hear about men talk about abortions and what they went through. It's like very rare. I hear women at times do it, and you did it very courageously and confidently today. And it's inspired me to think about, like, man, there's probably a lot of men out there who might need this conversation too and hear about it from what it feels like, be able to speak on it. And much like Armand said, we sort of, maybe we keep it moving and act like, okay, I got to keep going. But I tell you, man, that experience really, it broke my heart when I went through that. And it had me weak and sick for a long time. It took me a long time to get off my feet. And I held it in, man. I didn't think I talked but to one person. And the only reason I talked to that person, because I knew he and his partner also went through that. To then later have children together and keep their their child, and he shared a lot of pain with me, and I shared a lot of pain with him, and it was so cathartic and helpful. Without his support, I mean, I feel it would have been a lot longer process for my healing. And then people came about when I sought them, because I was just going through a lot of turmoil. So what you're sharing, I'm appreciative of that, and of course the confidentiality you'll have with people in your practice when you have that practice specifically, that to know, like, you not only can listen, but you actually have some experience specifically with those things is deep. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And the community seemingly will just keep growing is how it looks like for me. And I'm kind of excited personally, just thinking about this now, like in my own way. So thank you for that too. Like, who are the men in these, the other side of these stories that I just don't feel like I hear a lot. So, this healing work you're doing and speaking your truth is going to help heal our men, right? Because some of what you're saying, and in all candor, my personal, where I was at in my life, I wasn't a good man. I was really a wounded man. And I'm not saying I'm a good man now, but at that time I was more selfish than I ever had been. And that story deserves its own time. I'd like to share it. But what I can definitely say is, no, I mean, I felt like I didn't have the right to feel sad, like it was my kid, like this was my child too. It was kind of like, Jason, you really you messed this up, and now you just got to swallow that. but I couldn't. It was literally killing me. I had to take a lot of, not only did I talk to that friend, I went through a lot of counseling and got a lot of work done to try to reconcile this feeling I was having. I couldn't let it go. This was before our McKenna, our baby niece, and all this like judgment and guilt I had around that experience, and I was holding on to it, man. It was really intense. So in that way, at least as we talk about it, I'm certain that there are others out there who need to hear from you, your story specifically. So thank you again on that.
Last thing I'll just have to say, and thank you both for sharing your experiences on the topic. But echoing something that Jason said, which he was echoing something that Cameron said, and is also echoing something similar. I said in the beginning of the podcast, but when you talked about your students, Cameron, and how once you were you shared with them, they started to open up and share with you. It's like intimacy is a gift that you can only receive once you first give it away. And again, the only way you can give it away is if you know how to be vulnerable with yourself. So that's the other thing about intimacy. So many people want it, but how many people are willing to first give it and to do it? And I feel like oftentimes that's the only way you can get what you want is by first being willing to give it up. So I just thought I'd put that throw that out there because it was on my mind when you guys were talking.
Thank you. Hear that.
Domino effect, baby. Domino effect.
Hey. So, hey, y'all, here we are approaching, about the hour and a half mark. And like Tim said, we can go on, and we could, like, for Cameron's book, for y'all out there, Raw Sugar, Ashley Anderson Stern, you can get it on Kindle. You can find it on Amazon. Where else can you find it, Cameron? Do you have any other spots to thank people to?
I think there's like a lot that I'm still like unaware of. Apparently, it's like on Walmart, which I know a lot of people that online shop on Walmart, but I think it's on Walmart. The publishing company I went through, it's called Ex Libris. I know it's on there. I want to say it's on Barnes and Noble. Like, I should really know this, but I know for a fact, like Jason said, it's on Amazon. It's usually what I tell people if they're interested in buying it, Amazon. And then like you can, if you have like an iPhone on the book app, you can buy it through there. It's like the ebook version. I really should know like the answer to that question a little bit more, but like even like when I had first seen it on Amazon, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like legit. I was like, this is crazy. I cannot believe my shit is on Amazon. Like Amazon on Amazon. You know what I mean? Like I know we are hitting that 130 mark, but I do want to say, like, I guess the reason why I honestly don't know the answer to that question, because it was like, I mean, it was for me, like putting this book out there, it was like I just want people to read my shit. Like, it was never, I mean, yeah, it's a plus that I get some money from it, but like that was for me, honest to God, like not on some corny shit. That was really like it was never about that part for me. I just wanted people to read my book and I want to talk about it. And like this is like so cool to me to be able to like come on here and talk about this book that I wrote and talk about just things in general, like me being able to like sit here on this kind of platform and like have a conversation about something as controversial as abortion. It's so cool to me because it's and I don't want to get on that subject again because I could go on and on, but like it is controversial. And to be honest with you, like even that was a lot of what my resistance was about putting this out there in the public, because that subject has become so controversial. Like,
yeah, it's polarizing.
So controversial on so many levels that it's like, oh boy, all right, I'm opening Pandora's box the minute I bring this out into the world, me talking about it like the way that I did, But it's just like so cool to be able to like this is what I wanted to be doing. Like I'm doing it. This is exactly was what exactly I wanted to do. It was, and that is why, like, even my dad was like, how much so how much do you get for each book? I'm like, I have no clue. I don't know. I didn't know the answer to that question until he kind of forced me to figure it out. But because
So,
this is the important part for me. Like that chapter I talk about inspiring people, this is exactly what I wanted to do. Like I'm doing exactly what I said I wanted to do. So I don't know the answer to that question fully, but I know for a fact Kindle, like Jason said, Amazon. The other ones I gotta figure out a little bit more. But like those are the important those are the major ones, I wanna say.
Word.
Tim, did you have something prepared like normal for the guests?
Yeah. So we're gonna share our last words and we'll end like that.
No, I was wondering because, and I don't know if anyone else has their book next to them. I have my book here. Well, I mean, by my book, I mean Cameron's book right next to me. I feel like it'll be good to end with this. If you just reading the back of of the book, Cameron. I don't know if you have a version right next to you. Maybe it can be your words, your voice to end it after Tim says what he says. Do you have a copy of the book next to you?
I do have a copy.
Cool. So I
What
think
particular part are you
the back of it. The back of it.
okay, just not the part about me.
Yeah,
Just
no. The end. The last word will be tumultuous.
got you. Okay.
Yeah. So like, I
Okay.
think that would be a good way to end it. Just your voice, your words, and after Tim does his thing.
So also before all that goes down, Tim, Cameron, thank you for offering what's going to be written word at the end. Are there any final words, final thoughts from the heart? Armand, Tim, Cameron, anything we want to share about that?
Yeah. My final words would be thank you once again for coming on the podcast, Cameron, and sharing with us your experience and your story. I think it's fantastic. I'm glad, and I think it's quite clear your path in life, doing what you're doing now, working with the youth, working with the younger population, and helping them navigate their way through life. In regard to the topic of abortion, I know it's a very sensitive topic. So anyone who's listening who has been affected by it, then what am I trying to say? Sorry if we've infringed upon any sensibilities or any sensitivities. But thank you also to Jason and Cameron for talking about your experiences in the matter as well. Other than that, as usual, for all the listeners of the 206, thank you for listening in. And until next time, I'm out.
Or let me also check out then before I hand it over to Tim or Cameron for some final words. Yeah, thank you, Cameron, for coming on and assisting. Everyone really being honest and getting to some, like you said, some polarizing and some sensitive topics, and it's what we're trying to do with the 206. It really is, like, we've talked about it like this way for a long time, and we've had a lot of people come on and share really wonderful things. So you're one of our special guests, and we thank you for that. We also want to say thanks, for everyone out there listening, and like I want to echo what Armand said. Forgive us if we any sensitivities that we might have struck with any of our listeners. And if it did, like, maybe we can ask ourselves why, and what more can we do to heal? Because just like I think, Cameron, like you shared, you put it out there, you gave it away. So your story. So how much can it hurt you if you're already honor it and respect it? And I think that's really deep. So if these things are really striking the chord in life, and we didn't even talk about like race in America, the Black experience, which I'm a white co-host with two Black men, and we have Black women. We didn't even talk about that, and that has its own time, and for me to listen and to hear y'all's story, because I think some of these things is what we got to learn to do as a community. We got to sit in the discomfort that we might have about a certain thing, a subject, for us in the white community regards race, man, it used to hear about people really getting scared and defensive when you start talking about, oh, I'm not racist, I'm a good person, and all these kinds of things. It's a very common narrative us as white folks bring up to not talk about race or to hear about racism, especially anti-Black racism in America. So although it's really difficult at times to listen to the truth, my feeling is for healing as a community, because we're a diverse community in the United States, and there's a whole lot of us, and we all have a story. And to really sit in the what we consider personal discomforts, my suggestion and hope, and I don't really try to offer too many suggestions, though why I'm saying I feel it's very important is that we learn to hold ourselves like Cameron's teaching us when we're going through something. And why am I feeling like that? Why am I judging this? Am I judging myself? I'm judging somebody. To heal from that first requires us to go within and look at that. So those are just a few final thoughts I think I wanted to share. And like we know, we can talk and speak on these things at length. So also, Cameron, forgive us on our end. We get really excited about these things. We're super happy for you and thankful for you. So thank you for letting us, share and soak it in and kind of give our feelings on you and what you shared, sort of your vulnerability with who you are. And maybe we misinterpreted things. And in any case, after asking for your forgiveness, I want to also say thank you for doing it. And you know where I'm at. Anytime you need support, people giving you hell, call us up. We'll get on a DMC, we'll get in a 206, and it's safe here. We're gonna talk about it that way. So that's really what we're trying to build. So thank you for adding to this house we're building here in the 206. And with that, I'm just gonna say peace, blessings, and love to everyone. And I'm out.
Yeah, I'm really, this was like such a cool experience for me. I do really, really appreciate it a lot. This was awesome. So I'm like, thanks for like even thinking of me to come on here. This was like so cool. And I don't know if Tim
Tim, yeah,
was
Tim's gonna do his thing. Then you can end us with
okay.
your words. Yeah.
Cool.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Thank you.
So echoing my co-hosts, thank my listeners. I thank our special guest. I thank my co-hosts for sharing their time and moment with me today. Um, let me just say it plainly before I read my poem here. Vulnerability is a key ingredient into us moving forward as a species. Without it, there'll be no progress. The badge of trailblazing, of being a pioneer, or a revolutionary. So many human beings in our past, present, and future that will start to break down the barriers of ignorance. And as a badge for that, as a natural burden, the price tag is the blowback of negativity from other people. It's to be expected because it's such against the norm. There's no way we'll be able to learn about these closeted subjects in life without talking about it. It's what separates us beasts, man and women, from beast, is our ability to communicate. It's the only way. So vulnerability is a must. That's the way I see it. It's fundamental and it must happen. So it's kind of like I feel like I want to say thank you to you, but I still feel that all of us and any listeners have no idea how important being vulnerable is, and thus what you've contributed through your book. But again, thank you. So I'll start off by reading a poem. Listeners, at the end of an episode in which we're interviewing someone, I, as your co-host, likes to wrap things up at the end with a little wisdomatic poem I write up to kind of accumulate and serve the purpose of inspiring and promoting deeper thought. So without further ado, let me go ahead and do this, and then Ash, you can take up. Dear Ash, is it okay if I call it Dear Ashley?
Yeah.
From
go
the
for it. Yeah.
from the endless gold wheat fields of your most hopeful moments to the darkest abysmal depths of your most darkest ones. Acceptance of this range is a great step for us all, and a bar with no equal. I find it unbearably, overwhelmingly humbling that something as seemingly ordinary as figuratively taking our clothes off in front of one another is a key for putting on new clothes for our livelihood that we want to don. Vulnerability is the act of holding up a mirror for someone, whether or not they ask for it or not. And you want to know what the best part of that act is? It's the fact that you don't need something shiny, clean, or clear to do it. You just need a heart and the sight one only has when one truly is listening. So thank you, Ashley, for your raw sugar in all of our lives. And thank you to all of our listeners for your time. Much love and peace.
Thank you so much. I guess I'm gonna go ahead and read the back of this. So here it goes. I was depressed. I felt alone. I felt conflicted, lost. I didn't really know what else to do. So I decided to write. Be honest with myself. Be honest with other people. Comfort myself. Confront myself. Face the realist in me and quiet down the idealist. Think from my mind, but write from my heart. Take responsibility. Take ownership. Explore the parts of myself I wanted to keep hidden away and not open. Dig deep. Speak my own truth. Open up about the things I cried about, prayed about. What broke me and strengthened me, my fears and my hopes. I wanted to express myself. Be genuine. I read an article once about this woman who visited a slave plantation. The main source of income for the slave masters who owned the land was sugar cane. The woman went on to explain how difficult the process was to actually produce sugar cane during that period of time. This idea intrigued me. The idea that something so sweet came from something so painful, something so hard to process. Part of what makes my ancestry, my people, me, women so beautiful, sweet, is the pain, the hardship, the difficult processes that we persevered through. Raw sugar. The end product is sweet, but the journey to get there is tumultuous. So thank you guys so much again for having me. This was great. This was great. I loved it. And like I said, Raw Sugar, Ashley Anderson Stern. Get it for sure on Kindle and Amazon. And that's what I'm gonna say about that.
All right. All right. All right. All right. Armand, you want to begin the goodbye here? Do our normal thing here?
Until next time, 206. Peace out.
Deuces.